Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I used to work for one of the biggest retail chains in the UK. I've been there for about 4 years and worked my way up from stocking shelves to handling deliveries and customer service. Our store had recently rolled out a home delivery service. Being new, there were definitely some growing pains with the system, but our team always put in their best effort. We managed to keep mistakes to a minimum, though a few things did slip through the cracks occasionally. After a few months, we gotten the delivery system running smoothly. By then, about 99% of the problems we dealt with came from customer errors. People would select the wrong delivery date, choose pickup instead of delivery, enter wrong addresses, or forget to update their details when they moved. But somehow, we were always the ones who got blamed for their mistakes. I wasn't technically a supervisor, but my role required me to make supervisory decisions when manager approval wasn't needed. I handled customer queries, coordinated with drivers, and dealt with all the headaches that came with the territory. One day started like any other. I was organizing delivery schedules when one of my drivers called in. He told me the customer's house was all boarded up and looked like it had been abandoned for weeks. That seemed odd, so I pulled up the delivery details on my system. Right away, I noticed something was off. The postcode didn't match the street address. I did a quick search and found the issue. The customer had updated his street name when he moved but forgot to change the postcode. Our drivers rely on their GPS systems, which use the postcode to navigate to the right location. The correct address was 30 miles in the opposite direction from my driver's route. To make matters worse, it was just outside our delivery area, which meant we technically weren't even supposed to deliver there. According to company policy, drivers are only required to wait 15 minutes for customers who don't show up. They get plenty of advance notice about delivery times, so there's no excuse for not being available. I told my driver to bring the items back when he finished his route, and I'd arrange for another driver to take them out later since his second delivery was reasonably close to the correct address. The customer would still get his shopping that day, just a bit later than originally planned. I was gathering the paperwork to transfer the delivery to another vehicle when the phone rang. I answered with my usual greeting, and the person on the other end identified herself as someone from customer service. She explained that she had a customer on the line asking about his delivery. I told her to put him through. Now I should mention that our delivery department always gave customers our direct store number to avoid the hefty charges of calling customer service. The customer service line costs 75 pence per minute, while calling the store directly only costs 15 pence per minute or is sometimes free, depending on your phone plan. When the customer came on the line, he complained that he'd been waiting for his delivery and it was now over 10 minutes past the delivery slot. He wanted to know what was happening. 10 minutes. He was complaining about a 10-minute delay. I told him I was just about to call him actually, but he cut me off. He said he knew nonsense when he saw it and demanded to know where his delivery was. I tried to explain then there had been a mix-up with his address, but he interrupted me again. He told me not to dare say that to him and that he wanted his delivery. I attempted once more to explain the situation. I told him that when he changed his address, he'd forgotten to change his postcode, which caused our driver to go to the wrong location. But he wasn't having any of it. He insisted he didn't forget to change anything and that we must have done something wrong. I assured him it wasn't anything I had done. I apologized for the inconvenience and started to explain that my driver was on his last delivery and would return to the store to hand over his goods to another driver for delivery later that evening. But before I could finish explaining the solution, he demanded that I get on the phone with my driver and order him to turn around. I explained that I couldn't do that because the driver needed to stick to his scheduled route or risk a service investigation. If drivers went off route or took too long, it could mess up their entire schedule and potentially cost them their jobs. I started to say that I was willing to arrange for another driver to deliver his order later that day, which would mean he'd still get everything he ordered, just a few hours later than planned. but he cut me off before I could finish. He said he owned a delivery company himself, and if any of his drivers pulled that kind of stunt, they wouldn't be working for him anymore. At that point, I realized this conversation wasn't going anywhere. The guy wasn't interested in listening to explanations or reasonable solutions. I decided to let him rant while I got on with my work. I put the phone on speaker and started cleaning up the delivery area. While he continued shouting and ranting, I swept the floor, cleaned up some spills, took out the trash, stacked crates, and organized everything for the next morning shift. It made the work go by faster, honestly. A manager from another department heard all the noise and came over to see what was happening. I pointed to the phone and he listened for about 2 minutes before shaking his head and commenting on what a jerk the customer was being. Then he walked away, probably grateful it wasn't his problem to deal with. After what felt like forever, the epic rant seemed to come to an end. He asked if I was still there, and I said that I was. I looked at the clock and realized he'd been going for 45 minutes straight. Combined with the 10 minutes from the beginning of our call and the typical 20-minute wait time from the customer service queue, he'd been on the phone for over an hour. At 75 pence per minute, that was already costing him more than £56 and 25 pence. When he demanded to know what I was going to do about the situation, I repeated what I'd said earlier. I explained that I wouldn't be able to send the driver back since he'd already returned to the store, but I would happily arrange for another delivery later that day. Too late. He launched into another 30-minute rant. This time I took the phone off speaker and went about my business. I used the bathroom, went outside for a cigarette break, grabbed a soda from the vending machine, and even had a packet of chips. I figured he'd eventually run out of steam and hang up. When I came back and picked up the phone again, he was just finishing another sentence and asking what I was going to do about his delivery. I told him that, unfortunately, there was nothing more I could do from my end. All I could do was direct him back to customer service to file a complaint. Hopefully, they could sort something out since I wasn't authorized to arrange redelivery under these circumstances. He told me not to bother. He wanted me to cancel his order and said he wouldn't be using our services again. I apologized that he felt that way and told him to have a nice day before hanging up. I called the store manager to let her know what had happened, just in case he decided to file a complaint later. The store manager burst out laughing when I told her the whole story. She said she'd handle any fallout if it came up. I never heard anything more about it, and we never received another order from him. Here's why the phone call duration was so important. He spent all that time ranting, raving, and refusing to let me get a word in edgewise. His final phone bill came to around £82 and 50 pence. His total grocery order was £25, the absolute minimum required for home delivery. When I realized what had happened, I started laughing. Here was this rude, abusive customer who expected me to sit there and take his verbal abuse like some scolded schoolchild. He ended up paying more than 3 times his grocery bill just to yell at me over the phone. For someone who claimed to own his own delivery company, you'd think he'd have been a bit smarter about managing his phone expenses, but I guess karma has a sense of humor. I would have loved to see his face when that phone bill arrived. I'm a Rear Admiral in the Royal New Zealand Navy. At 52 years old, I've seen my fair share of difficult people, but nothing quite prepared me for what happened at my local countdown last Tuesday. I had just finished a long day reviewing naval operations reports when I decided to stop by the grocery store on my way home. My wife had asked me to pick up ingredients for dinner, and honestly, I was looking forward to grabbing my usual guilty pleasure, a bag of gummy bears from the candy aisle. Those little colorful treats have been my weakness since I was a kid. The countdown near our house has become like a second home to me over the past 5 years. I shop there at least twice a week, and the staff all know me by name. The manager and I often chat about rugby matches, and the employees always smile when they see me heading straight for the candy section after picking up whatever my wife needs. That evening I was browsing the bakery section looking for some fresh bread when this woman approached me. The first thing I noticed was her makeup. It looked like she had applied it with a paint roller. Bright orange foundation that didn't match her neck, eyeshadow in about 6 different colors, and lipstick that was smeared outside her lip lines. But it wasn't her appearance that bothered me. It was the way she looked at me like I owed her something. She rudely demanded to know where the brand X marshmallows were. She didn't say please, didn't even look around to see if I was wearing a uniform or name tag, just demanded information like I was her personal servant. I'm used to people showing respect for military rank, but even setting that aside, common courtesy goes a long way with me. I started to tell her that I didn't work there and that there was no need to be rude. But before I could even finish explaining, she cut me off completely. She accused me of lying and demanded that I go to the back room to get the marshmallows for her. Then she threatened to sue me if I didn't comply immediately. Before I could even respond to her outrageous demand, she grabbed my arm and yanked me backwards with surprising force. Now I'm not a small man. Years of military training have kept me in decent shape, but the sudden pull caught me completely off guard. I stumbled and fell backwards, landing hard on the tile floor. My shoulder hit the ground first, sending a sharp pain down my arm. I called out in shock, asking what was wrong with her. That's when one of the employees came rushing over. I recognized him, a young guy who's always friendly when he's stocking shelves. He had heard the commotion and came to see what was happening. The employee told Karen that she needed to stop screaming or he would have to kick her out of the store. His voice was professional but clearly annoyed by her behavior. Karen suddenly switched her tone completely, like she was flipping a switch. Her voice became sickeningly sweet and innocent. She told the employee that he couldn't kick her out because I had supposedly punched her. She pointed at me and demanded that I be removed from the store instead, threatening to sue if her demands weren't met. I was still sitting on the floor, bewildered by what had just happened. The audacity of this woman was incredible. Not only had she assaulted me, but now she was trying to flip the story completely around. I protested that her story was completely untrue and explained that she had grabbed me and pulled me down. But Karen just kept pointing and carrying on about how I had attacked her. That's when I heard a familiar voice behind me. The manager had appeared and I could see the anger on his face. He's a good man who's been running this location for over a decade, and he doesn't tolerate nonsense from anyone. The manager told Karen to get out of his store immediately. His voice left no room for argument. Karen smugly replied that a customer couldn't kick her out, so she wasn't going anywhere. She seemed to think she had some kind of upper hand in the situation. The manager corrected her, explaining that he wasn't a customer, but the manager of the store. He gave her an ultimatum: leave immediately, or he would call the police and have her arrested for assault. Karen protested that this was unfair, insisting again that I had punched her and claiming that she had never touched me. Her voice was getting louder and more shrill with each word. The manager helped me to my feet, and I could see him shaking his head in disbelief. He told Karen that he had seen the whole incident happen and that I had never laid a finger on her. He explained that he knew me personally, that I was not only a very nice man but also a rear admiral in the Royal New Zealand Navy. He said with confidence that he knew I would never lay a hand on anyone. I could see Karen's face change when she processed what the manager had said. For a moment she looked uncertain, but then her entitlement kicked back in full force. She told him to go ahead and call the cops, claiming that they would find out I was lying. The manager didn't hesitate. He pulled out his phone and called the police while Karen stood there with her arms crossed, looking smug like she had already won some kind of victory. When the police arrived about 10 minutes later, they separated us into different areas of the store to get our statements. I was taken to the customer service counter while Karen was escorted to the manager's office. The officer who interviewed me was professional and thorough. The police officer asked me to explain exactly what had happened. I told him everything from the beginning, how she had approached me rudely, how I had tried to tell her I didn't work there, and how she had physically grabbed and pulled me down when I tried to explain. I also mentioned that I was a regular customer and that several employees had witnessed the incident. I explained to the officer that I had been shopping at this store for 5 years and that the staff could vouch for my character. I emphasized that I would never start trouble in this store or anywhere else. After they finished taking statements, the police officer told us that they would be reviewing the security camera footage to determine what actually happened. Karen was still insisting that I had attacked her, even telling the officers that she was going to press charges and sue both me and the store. About 20 minutes later, the officer who had been reviewing the footage came back with a very different expression on his face. He walked straight up to Karen and told her that she was coming with them. The change in Karen's demeanor was instant. The smug confidence disappeared completely. She asked in confusion why she was being arrested, still insisting that I was the one who had attacked her. The police officer explained that the security footage clearly showed her grabbing and pulling me, causing me to fall. He said that there was no evidence whatsoever that I had touched her and told her that she was being arrested for assault. What followed was a scene that I'll never forget. Karen started screaming at the top of her lungs, claiming that the footage was fake, that we were all conspiring against her, and that her lawyer would shut down the entire store. She fought against the handcuffs, kicked at the officers, and had to be physically carried out of the store. When they loaded her into the police car, she was still screaming through the window, pointing at me and making threats about lawsuits and revenge. The other customers in the store just stood there watching in amazement. The manager came over to check on me after the police car had driven away. He asked if I was all right and whether I needed medical attention. My shoulder was still sore, but nothing seemed to be seriously injured. I told him I thought I was okay, just shaken up, and mentioned that I had never had anyone physically grab me like that in a grocery store before. The manager apologized for what had happened. A week later, I found out that Karen had been charged with assault and was facing additional charges for her behavior toward the police officers. I work with an admission and career counseling team that helps students from different universities and colleges. We help students and their parents understand what college life is really like, help with applications, proofread essays, and build portfolios. Most of us on the team are just regular students from these universities, not official representatives. We never guarantee admission to anyone, and we make that super clear. I graduated from a decent university a few years back and got into this work because I wanted to help other students navigate the college application process. It's rewarding work, even though we deal with some difficult parents sometimes. My job includes outreach, organizing events, general advice, and team management. I'm not a professional counselor, just someone with experience who can offer guidance. We usually reach students through school presentations or word of mouth. A few weeks ago, we did a presentation at one of the most expensive private schools in our city. We set up a table with pamphlets and contact information and had a couple of team members there to talk to parents and students personally. Most people were really positive, though we got the usual questions about why they should hire us if we can't guarantee admission and what we could do that they couldn't do themselves. We're used to those. But then Karen showed up and she was something else entirely. At first, she seemed sweet enough. She came up to me and started asking about my educational background and career path, which is totally normal. Then she moved over to talk to one of our student representatives, a really bright girl from one of the top universities in our country. Karen asked her about her background too, took some pamphlets, and moved away to let other people talk. I was busy chatting with the school principal and some teachers when I noticed Karen had pushed her way back to our table. She shoved herself to the front of the crowd and loudly demanded that our student representative convince her that the university was worth the huge fees and hype. The poor student representative was caught off guard. She's just a young student herself, not a marketing person. She stumbled a bit but recovered quickly and gave a really impressive answer that got the other parents and students asking more questions. Karen didn't look impressed at all and grumbled something I couldn't hear over all the noise. Then she disappeared. Here's how our counseling works. We offer a group session that's open to everyone. Parents pay a small fee and can come see if we're a good fit for them and their kids. It covers basic college planning and selection. After that, they can email or call to book a private session with a specific counselor based on their needs. A few days later, my coworker called me over looking confused. She told me that a parent who had already done both the group session and a one-on-one session wanted to book another session specifically with me, mentioning me by name. I was baffled because my name isn't on any of our counselor lists. I'm not qualified to do formal counseling sessions. I declined to do a counseling session because I literally can't do that without getting fired, but I offered to meet for an informal coffee discussion. My coworker called the parent back while I was standing there, and even though the phone wasn't on speaker, I could hear screaming and yelling from the other end. Eventually, the woman calmed down enough to agree to meet me, but she insisted it had to be the same day. I had a pretty empty schedule, so I agreed, though I already had a bad feeling about this. She showed up exactly on time, which was unusual in my experience. Behind her was a sharply dressed girl in a school uniform, even though it was the weekend and I knew that particular school didn't have weekend classes. The girl was actually really polite and respectful, addressing me and introducing her mom properly. Then Karen launched into this weird conversation, acting like we were old friends. It took me a second to realize she was the same woman from the school event. We sat down and I started explaining college and post-school education options. This wasn't a paid session. I was doing it on my own time just to help. Karen kept cutting me off and talking over me throughout our conversation. I'm used to nervous and entitled parents, so I stayed patient. I gently reminded her that I wasn't a professional counselor, which she completely ignored. Then she brought up the same university she had pestered our student representative about at the school event. She told me that she and her husband had done some research and decided this university would be the best for their daughter. She said money wasn't an issue and asked me how much it would cost to send her daughter there. I assumed she meant tuition fees, so I opened up the university website on my laptop and started explaining the costs. She cut me off by snapping her fingers right in front of my face while I was looking at the screen and talking. She told me she already knew all that information and could Google it herself. She clarified that she wanted to know how much she'd have to pay me. I thought she was asking about our counseling fees, so I started explaining our service structure. Again, she snapped her fingers in my face and cut me off. She called me dense and said she was surprised by my stupidity given the school I went to. Then she switched to our regional language and spoke to me slowly like I was a child, explaining that she wanted to know how much she'd have to pay me as a bribe to guarantee her daughter's admission to the university. I was honestly offended, but this was my workplace and I couldn't just throw her out. Plus, we do sometimes get parents asking about guaranteed admission, though never so directly about bribes. I matched her condescending tone and explained that we don't offer those services, that it would be illegal, and that all we could do was help coach her daughter and improve her skills, not ensure admission. That's when Karen completely lost it. She threw the biggest, loudest, most entitled screaming fit I've ever seen from a grown woman. We were in a glass meeting room at the end of our office space, so everyone in the department could see what was happening, including my boss. My boss walked in when she saw the situation getting worse and my attempts to calm Karen down failing. She introduced herself and cut Karen off. Karen launched into a full complaint against me, calling me a cheat and accusing me of making false promises during the school presentation. She claimed I had falsely advertised that I could get her daughter admitted. She demanded that I be fired and insisted that my boss make sure her daughter got into that university or she would sue all of us for malpractice and false advertising. My boss stayed completely calm and professional. She explained 3 key points to Karen. First, I always repeat multiple times during presentations that we don't guarantee admission to anyone. Second, we legally cannot guarantee admission, so any promises made on illegal grounds aren't enforceable in court anyway. Third, every presentation and session we do is recorded and stored for training purposes. My boss reviews all of them and knew exactly what I had and hadn't said. Karen started yelling again about how she was going to sue us into bankruptcy. Then she grabbed her daughter, who looked like she was around 17 or 18, by the wrist and dragged her toward the door. On her way out, she deliberately pushed over an expensive ceramic vase that shattered on the floor. We called the police immediately. Karen was charged for property damage and banned from using our services. We also sent a description of what happened along with her contact details to other counselors we work with to warn them about her. Now we're waiting for her threatened lawsuit. Our legal representative is practically bouncing with excitement because we know we did absolutely nothing wrong. We have everything recorded, documented, and backed up. The daughter seemed like such a nice kid too. I really hope she finds the help she needs for her college applications, because with a mother like that, she is going to need all the support she can get. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.